a congressman for Minnesota's 1st District for 12 years, and now sharing his thoughts with us on the Al Travis Show. It's Congressman Gil Gutknecht.
Congressman, I have been waiting to get you on the program all day yesterday. I saw your name coming up, and I'm like, yeah, I got to talk to him. Let me throw this softball up to you, and then I want you to run with it. You and I are roughly the same age. We probably both remember when Reagan was president, and him and Tip O'Neill would go at it. I mean, we had huge differences in politics then. There were crazy people. Someone shot Reagan. You get through the Clinton eras. We had different opinions big time then. I think there's always the crazies out there, but for some reason, something has changed that they seem almost activated to try to outdo each other, that there's more here. We're not any more divided today in politics, are we? Or is it just more highlighted? Because that's kind of the feeling. We had Ronald Reagan crazy people back then, too. Your thoughts?
I think our society, pardon me, I think our society has become much more rude and crude. For example, I don't think when I was, 30 years old, I don't think there really was a term for road rage.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I just think in general, our language is much more coarse today. Okay. And it reminds me of, I look at these opportunities with you, or whether I'm speaking to a group or whatever I'm doing, going back to my old days as a school supply salesman and some of the sales training programs that I took. I was told you should always give people something. Okay. And so when I'm on your show or when I'm talking to people, I feel like I need to teach them something, some history. Sure. And one of my favorite people in history was a gentleman by the name of William Wilberforce. Now, some people will remember that name because he was a member of the British Parliament for over 50 years. Oh. And they actually made a movie about him. And his big theme was he wanted to end the slave trade in England. And the first time he got up on the House of Commons and gave a speech against slavery, he was literally laughed off the floor, okay, and heckled. But people don't realize he had two major goals for his time in the British Parliament. One was to end the slave trade, to end slavery. Mm-hmm. But the other was to return the British colonies and the British people, to make them more mannerly, to return manners to the British people. Yeah. And I think you could argue that today, and if you watch arguments on the House of Commons today, they're much more mannerly. Their manners and they're not as rude and as crude as they were back in the day of William Wilberforce. Okay. And frankly, I think we need some political leaders today from both sides of the aisle or from somewhere who begin to talk about the need to return manners to the American people. And I think all of this is sort of an outgrowth of this idea that, whatever you do to me, I'm going to do it back to you double. And we don't have to go that far back. And I'm not trying to just pick on our governor, but just 2 weeks ago, he gave a speech in South Carolina where he said, we have to be a little bit meaner. Yeah. And if I can, I'll just quote him. Yep. He said, we have to bully the shit out of Trump. Yeah. Okay. That's not helpful. That's not helpful. That's the kind of rhetoric. Now, we don't know, and we never will know what caused this particular individual to snap, but something did. And I think that something is this constantly elevated anger and rhetoric in not only in our political system, but in our general lives. Yeah. If somebody cuts you off on the freeway, you have to figure out a way to get even with them. That's got to stop. The old expression is an eye for an eye will ultimately result in everybody being blind. All right. And so I think it is a symptom of a society that needs to step back, and we need to get back to, relatively peaceful discourse.
Let's go back to Reagan and O'Neill, right? These guys were friends, even though they were arch enemies at the office. The book I read with Reagan, he got along with them spankingly well. He understood it. back in our day, because I love when old guys like me say that, my friend, and even today, my friends on the left and I can disagree, but we disagree on how to get America to a better place. We don't hate each other for that. There seems to be today, and I will use, and maybe you followed it this morning, I didn't. This all happened Saturday, Sunday, and Sunday night. We capture the guy, and everybody's saying, let's, tame the rhetoric down. That lasted one day, sir. Some guy in Utah, Senator Mike Lee, makes some weird comment on his Facebook. Senator Tina Smith is outraged, and now everybody's got this. I can't believe you're saying these things. 20 years ago, whenever these phone things came out, these apps, Mike Lee could say something all he wanted in Utah, and I probably wouldn't have found out about it, right? I mean, now he says something, and everybody's got an opinion on it. If it doesn't start at the top, if these senators can't tame it down, I'll get on Lee. I don't even know what his actual quote was. I'm looking for it. I don't care. Shush up. Like you're saying, can we take the rhetoric down a little bit? Can we just say, this is tragic. We're going to figure this thing out. Let's move on. None of them are. They're fighting about it today, 24 hours after we were all saying we weren't going to do this. Here we are at the U.S. Capitol bickering about what some senator said about what happened in Minnesota. It's got to start at the top.
Well, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. I mean, I think we all have to, each of us individually have to begin to say, we're going to disagree without being disagreeable. Okay. And, and part of it is we have, let me go back to you talk about in the good old days.
Yeah.
One of the best examples of a giant from a political standpoint was a congressman from Illinois by the name of Henry Hyde. Henry Hyde was a giant in many respects. He was 6'5". He played center in college. Yeah. A big man in every respect. But he was also probably one of the smartest guys that ever sat in Congress. Okay. But he had an incredible, infectious sense of humor. And when someone would say something particularly nasty to him, he had a marvelous way of taking that and sort of letting it go off his back and using a sense of humor in return. I'll never forget, I was sitting on the House floor next to Henry, and there was I won't even say whether he was from our side or their side, but there was some guy up there, and he was giving a speech, and he obviously, whether he didn't believe what he was saying, and it was just nasty rhetoric. And Henry Hyde turned to me, and he said, I'll never forget this, he said, "It is the great politician who can accuse his opponent of duplicity without appearing to be envious." You see so much duplicity. You have our governor one week telling everybody they got to beat the whatever out of be meaner Trump. And then the next week he's saying we've got to calm down the rhetoric. Well, start today. Start now. Everybody needs to start now. And they need to understand the story of William Wilberforce and what a huge difference one person made for an entire country. And we need a William Wilberforce today.
So if you had $100 on it, would you bet that it's going to happen, or is this just going to be another one of those things? I mean, how often is this going to happen that we're just like, well, today we're going to get nicer. Today we're going to stop. Is this enough? I mean, Minnesota nice, right? That's our little motto. If this doesn't get us there, this doesn't get people to change, what in the world would?
I don't know. I mean, the truth of the matter is we don't know, okay? Yeah. But once you see enough symptoms of cancer, somebody ought to do something about it. And as I say, when you say somebody, it's got to start with me. It's got to start with you. I mean, when we discuss political issues on shows like this, we have to be prepared to disagree without being disagreeable, without getting personal. In fact, I will tell you one thing. In when I was in the legislature, there was a rule, and I used to know the number. And what it was you could not accuse an adversary on the House floor, and you could not do it in such a way that you questioned their motives. Okay? Oh, okay. We see way too much of this. We're already into whether this guy was a Republican, whether he was a Democrat, whether he was a Trumpist, whether he was just angry. We don't know. And frankly, we probably never will know his exact
What is
motives.
The need for that, sir? That is brilliant. What is the need for that? Because I'm sitting here and, talking to some people. Well, I heard that he was a right winger, and I heard that he had the no kings thing. And I turned to this guy and said, what difference does it make? Somebody shot Trump, he's a lunatic. Somebody shot these guys, he's a lunatic. You can pick him from whatever side you want. Does the fact that wherever he's registered, not registered to vote, the guy went nuts. Does this really matter? I mean, I all my liberal friends, I don't hate you because some nut job shot at the president. You know what I'm saying? Why do we have this need to figure out politically where he stood? Like, okay, he sprung a leak. He's not there.
Right.
What? I missed. Okay. I'm
missing
why. What is our need?
Motives? What was his motive? We don't know, and we never will know. Okay. And arguing about that only keeps this flame of anger going. Yeah. And we got to say, this has got to stop. And this is a great place to say, it's got to stop now. It's got to stop with me.
I love that, sir. We're going to do that right here on this program. Thank you for that. I want to go to break. When we come back, if you're good with it, we're in a bit of a war thing going on, Israel against Iran. I'd like to talk to you about that if we could. Can we do that?
Sure.
All right. I've got him. Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the Al Travis Show.
All the special interests are represented in St. Paul. But who speaks for you? Center of the American Experiment does. Our policy fellows dig into the tough issues that matter to you and offer common sense solutions on education, taxes, crime, and energy. American Experiment is the trusted, nonpartisan voice of Minnesotans like you. We are working every day to make Minnesota a better, safer, more prosperous place. We are American Experiment. Go to americanexperiment.org to learn more.
Achieving your financial goals requires individual planning and a comprehensive approach. At Midwest Money Management, our mission is to provide you with the knowledge, tools, and confidence to feel comfortable financially today and secure about tomorrow. Learn more at MidwestMoneyManagement.com. That's MidwestMoneyManagement.com.
Securities offered through JW Cole Financial Inc., member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services offered through JW Cole Advisors Inc., Midwest Money Management, and JW Cole Financial Inc. and JW Cole Advisors Inc. are unaffiliated entities.
As in alligator. L also in alligator. But it's not alligator. It's the Al Travis Show.
Solid lucky to have Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the program with a regular basis here. Sir, I sit here, I do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I think anybody who's paying attention to America realizes that would be horrific. But Israel with this preemptive strike, and I'll throw this, Trump said 61 days before, you got 60 days to figure this out. We got to do this. And on the 61st day, this lights up. I presume Trump isn't involved, but has obviously been chatting with Israel. Now you see Iran blanketing bombs coming across the night. How close are we to this getting something more than a two-nation issue?
I think the likelihood of that is very, very small. Okay.
Oh, okay, good.
Because the Arab countries are all privately saying, yes, we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon either. They don't trust the Ayatollahs. They don't trust Iran. From the Saudis to the United Arab Emirates, I think privately they're all, cheering on Israel. So the chances that this becomes a broader war are pretty slim. But let me make an analogy here. We're saying very clearly, the Israelis are saying, and most of the rest of the world is now saying, we don't want the Ayatollah to have his hands on nuclear weapons. And we believe that they're literally months away from being able to not only produce nuclear weapons, but deliver them. Okay. Yeah. Let me just back up a little bit. And so now we all understand why Israel did what it did and why we gave them the tacit approval to do that. Well, we haven't come around to understand why Putin did what he did. And the bottom line was, he said, I don't want NATO, meaning U.S., nuclear-tipped missiles. I don't want Ukraine to become part of NATO so that they can put nuclear-tipped missiles 100 miles from Moscow. Yeah. He said, that cannot happen. He said that repeatedly. Yeah. Okay. And so the similarities to me are almost unmistakable. And yet most Americans, frankly, are not aware of why Putin did what he did. So, we have to understand that everybody has their own issues and their own motives. And I think there is a common thread between both of those wars, and the fact that they probably will not spread into World War III because of the rest of the people around the world, frankly, somewhat understand what the stakes are and why what is happening is happening.
Well, I think I saw Trump yesterday something about sometimes they're just going to have to fight it out amongst themselves. Do you think he pulls the money back? I mean, we help Israel in a lot of ways. The money to fund these bombs and these sort of things we've been sending them. We sent it for Hamas. That's still going on. I don't know how Israel, that small little country, sticks up. They've got fights on every border they've got, and they're taking it to Iran. Without America, I don't know how they make it. Ukraine's basically in the same boat, right? I mean, how long will they last if we stop sending cash? Do you think Trump pulls that money back? Or are we in it for the long haul with cash, not people?
That's a question I cannot answer. Okay. I mean, at some point, I think our patience runs out with both. Okay, that's my general feeling, but I don't know what point that is. Trump clearly wants the war in Ukraine to end. Yeah. I think he clearly understands the Russian-speaking portions of Ukraine are probably going to wind up at minimum as an independent state or a buffer between Ukraine. I think Trump understands, and frankly, anyone who's studied that part of the world understands that Ukraine will never become a member of NATO. That has to be that card should have been dropped 2 years ago. Okay, so I think we are in a situation where most people understand what the final settlement is going to look like. It's just that the leaders in Ukraine don't want to get there. And frankly, they've had the technology, partly with help from us, that they can deliver some pretty tough blows on the Russians. The Russians have taken a beating here in the last few weeks. That doesn't mean they're going to lose this war.
Yeah, they're willing to throw too many people, too much life, too much treasure at it. Sir, I thank you for coming to the program. A strange program that it was this week. I mean, starting with just all the stuff here in Minnesota. I appreciate you a ton, sir. Hope you're hitting the ball well.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, every now and again, a good strike. Thanks for being on the program.
See you soon.
He's Congressman Gil Gutknecht on the Al Travis Show.